Jaron Campanella, world's most famous flat earther who was once a friend of mine, recently abandoned his flat earth ideology after the final experiment. Jaron used to have a tagline that goes like this:
Tell the truth. Don't be fraudsters.
This is Jaronism, reminding you again, don't lie to each other.
Tell the truth.
Until he met a rich pastor who teaches this:
neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
if it wasn't for Jaron, I wouldn't even be a flat earther. So why didn't I change my mind? This next series of videos will answer this question and many more.
Now, of course, I'm not so naive to think that I am going to convince everyone of my conclusions. It'd be crazy of me, right, to think that after millennia, I would just dive in here and solve these dilemmas to everyone's satisfaction. That won't happen. But I will say that I've spent a very long time thinking about and pondering and studying and contemplating this issue.
Why would a pastor go through all of the trouble and studying to convince himself that neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral? In my opinion, it's because, well, he's a liar. And in this failure of a sermon, Pastor Duffy tries to make it like Christians have been debating this topic for years and that Christians have always been scratching their heads on whether or not lying and deceiving is wrong.
I felt it not only important, but crucial and necessary to cover the biblical material on lying and deception before taking on the monumental task of solving the age-old question of whether or not it's always wrong to lie and deceive.
For years, the church has agreed on the fact that lying and deception is immoral and that it's evil. And now if one man can come along and convince y'all otherwise, then I'm truly convinced that that man has the spirit of the Antichrist and he's one of the pastors that's a part of the great apostasy that the Bible speaks of. Now, if the truth will always set us free, then it's never a good time to lie and deceive. There's never a right time to do wrong. And this is the same type of rhetoric that xenophobic Bible thumpers use to justify world conquest, slavery, and inequality. Pastor Duffy is the same kind of Christian that Christopher Columbus and Alexander the Great was, if you know what I mean. These Christians bend and twist the biblical scriptures in a way to make the Bible condone their evil ways, but these people are the synagogue of Satan and they're not real Christians. So what do I mean by the Christopher Columbus type Christians? It was the church who used the Bible for world conquest and to condone slavery, not true Christians who strive to be like Christ. And when I say the church, I'm talking about the papacy. Even in the book of Revelation, it speaks about how more than 75% of modern church members will fall astray and follow the beast and the Antichrist and the false prophets during the end days or during the time of what's called the great apostasy.
Most Christians, some majority, believe that it's always wrong to lie. They believe that lying is inherently wrong and therefore should never be practiced. After carefully looking at both sides of the debate, and after taking a very deep dive into everything I could possibly find in Scripture regarding lying and deception, I have come to the conclusion that neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
Oh my God! So the Bible is clear to talk about the falling away of the church, but not the true Christians who are Christ-like. See, the church can't promote the Christ-like behavior because the church is in bed with the state, and the state is promoting the prison agenda, the over-sexualized agenda, the corrupted agenda to keep us dumbed down, ignorant, blind, and just consumers. So being a church member is almost like a guaranteed sentence to condemnation, because all of these rich pastors and big churches, they're in bed with the state and they're leading their congregations astray. So you don't want to be a church member in these times. Church members are following everything other than what the Bible teaches. So if you really want to know if you're living in the truth or not, strive to be Christ-like. That is what I strive to be, Christ-like. If we just focus on trying to live like Christ, then we know we can look in the mirror and know that we are on the right moral path. Anything other than the behavior of Jesus Christ is contrary to the truth. And this is the way of the world, which is what the modern church is following. So like the Bible said, the church is on its way to hell because it's in bed with the state and it's part of the papacy. They are following the world elitist and corporate agenda. And they're not following the ways of Christ, they're following the ways of the world. It's all by design. These two can't work against each other. So again, all of these rich pastors and churches are in the bed with the state, big pharma, NASA, the corporations, bankers, and all the others. They're all tied together. Truth is a threat to their agenda. So this may explain why Pastor Duffy is defending NASA. NASA has the serpent logo. The serpent was the deceiver. And Pastor Duffy is a pastor that teaches his congregation that lying and deception is okay with God. So he definitely has the spirit of the Antichrist and the serpent. And in my opinion, like I said, is one of the false prophets of the great apostasy. Pastors like him are getting many Christians to turn away from the true and living God and towards new age philosophies like this.
Most Christians, some majority, they believe that lying is inherently wrong and therefore should never be practiced. I have come to the conclusion that neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
And the crazy thing about all of this is that if there is a hell and you are led to it by Pastor Duffy, you can't even blame Pastor Duffy, because if you have an ear to listen, he says in his own lecture out of his own mouth, he's come to the conclusion. His exact words was, I've come to the conclusion. So you're going to take his word and his conclusion over what the Bible say, thou shalt not lie.
Neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
And that's going to lead many to hell, because all you really have to do is look at how Christ was living. Christ wasn't a liar or deceiver, so be Christ-like and never follow the ways of man and the ways of the world. This clearly explains why Pastor Decepticon Duffy is defending NASA, and he has the spirit of the serpent, and NASA logo is the serpent. And keep in mind, all of NASA's missions are named after Greek pagan gods. These gods trace back to the papacy, not the true and living God. The elite can't carry out their agenda on the masses without lying to us and deceiving us. So it makes perfect sense that one of their own pastors will bend the Bible in a way to make it as if the God of heaven is okay with us lying to each other and deceiving one another. All of those who defy the Bible and contradict the ways of Christ are of Satan the deceiver. They can't rule over us if they can't lie to us, people, and if they can't deceive us. Their ways are just like their father, the devil, who is the ruler of this world.
No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the earth be flat. You mentioned that the ground always being flat, and I agree. I've measured it flat. I've done laser tests. I've done mirror flash observations.
The globe, the sphere Earth, perfectly describes the observations that I made.
You mentioned that the ground always being flat, and I agree. I've measured it flat. I've done laser tests. I've done mirror flash observations.
So here's a challenge. Show me any movement in the world whose agenda poses a real threat, and I'll show you controlled op puppets at the top who are in leadership roles, and they are leading those movements to the slaughterhouse and in the direction of the corporations, the world elite, aka the rich man of the world, like Duffy. Yes, people, stop right there and let's just make a quick point, right? Most of all of these movements in the world whose agenda poses a real threat, they are always infiltrated. We got to make the connections, people. The Vatican and NASA is working together, and everybody is in on it. Is one big cash cow based upon keeping everybody dumbed down, blind, and ignorant, and not asking questions, just trusting what a few men say. Like what we get with the final experiment and with space programming. It's the same thing we get in the clergy, in the papacy, where everyone's just trusting what a few men at the top say. And there's a need to know basis. This same system is in the military, it's in the brotherhoods, Freemasonry, and all of that. So this article is just showing the fact that the Vatican and NASA are in bed together. NASA needs help, and they go to the Vatican for help. So again, one thing we got to keep in mind is that Jaron Campanella has an IMDb, Bob Nodal has one, Mark Sargent have one, and Patricia Steer have one. And when you look at the Flat Earth movement, it's literally been damaged and driven into the ground by the people with IMDbs. Because think about it, y'all. The mainstream media don't come to everybody. Now, within the Flat Earth community, we know that Patricia Steer ain't nobody checking for her. We know that ain't too many people excited about Mark Sargent. We also know Jaron ain't the world's most famous flat earther like the media try to make him to be. So why would the media lie for Jaron? Why would the media try to forge this title on him? And why would the mainstream machine and the media prop these people out in front of the public as the representatives of flat earth? And keep in mind, all of these guys are actors. They're literally actors who are members of IMDb. Mark Sargent has an IMDb, as you can see right here. Jaron Campanella is an IMDb actor. Patricia Steer, IMDb. These are TV personalities. These are actors that have infiltrated the movement. What we got to realize, if you are a flat earther, and you're serious and you're for real and it ain't an act with you, you ain't acting, right? People who ain't acting, they always gonna have consistent answers. No matter what day or what time you ask them if the earth is flat, they gonna always tell you it's flat, and they always gonna give you the measurable, provable facts that we use to determine that with. A person that ain't acting will never be inconsistent and wishy-washy like Jaron is. See, paid actors will say whatever the highest bidder want them to say. And when you getting paid to act, you'll never be consistent because you'll say whatever people want you to say who giving you the bag. So Jaron say it's flat when the flat earthers are donating and paying into his experiments and he's proving it's flat. But then when the globalists come with the bigger bag, now it's a spear.
Lastly is I want to show, if you want a test that will prove this to you, if this guy actually cared, he would go out and do this test, but he probably won't. Let me share my screen real quick and I'll be done. So this is the cheapest test you can do, also the easiest test. It's just called a mirror test, okay? So if you do the mirror test, all you need is a camera, a mirror, and two people, okay? And you have somebody go to where there's a body of water. Monterey Bay works great in California. I don't know where else you might want to go. But this body of water across here, let's say we're 25 miles. 25 miles is 104 foot of bulge. If you don't know how big 104 feet is, it's a 10-story building. It's huge. It's like the Jesus Redeemer statue in Brazil, right? That's 100 feet. So in between two people 25 miles apart, there's supposed to be a 104 foot bulge. Now, if you go out and have this guy hold a mirror and you have basically the light's going to be coming obviously like this, the light rays are coming down. Oops, sorry, this thing's in the way. There we go. So if the mirror's coming down and it's flashing on this mirror, and then you have somebody with a camera over here who's just looking across the water and trying to pick up the mirror flash. The thing about a mirror flash is it's a line of sight observation, meaning, and you can go do this right now in your front yard. Take a mirror out with your friend, start flashing the sun at them, and then get behind something like a car, garbage can, anything. The second that mirror is occulted, meaning the second that you don't have line of sight to the mirror, you lose all flash. So when you're actually seeing a mirror flash, and you can prove this right now, you will see that it's because you have line of sight between you and the mirror. Now go out to a water 25 miles apart and watch this person zoom in and pick up this person doing the mirror flash. Here's one that they did in Monterey Bay with a P900 infrared. Again, we can show you where the cameras are. Look at this mirror flash. How are you seeing a mirror flash? They're supposed to be 100-foot. No, they're doing 18 miles, I think. So it's like a 60-foot hump. But 60 foot is a 6-story building. How would we be seeing a mirror flash from the other side of the water when there's supposed to be a 60-foot hump in between you?
You mentioned that the ground always being flat, and I agree. I've measured it flat. I've done laser tests. I've done mirror flash observations. No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the earth be flat.
Anybody with any intelligence knows that your numbers and your measurements won't change just because you saw the sun do something. That's what any intelligent person would know, that if I measure my floor and I get some numbers that I measured, it doesn't matter what the light do up here or what that light do or this chandelier or that light on my ceiling turned around that way. Will that observation of what the light did, let's say I got moving lights in my ceiling and I observe one of the lights do something, will that change my ground measurements? No, it won't. Sky observations don't change ground measurements. Intelligent people know that numbers don't lie. Measurements don't lie. Anybody can come behind me and do the same measurements. Is all verifiable and provable, and those numbers will be the same every time for everybody. They wouldn't change because one of us observed a light on the ceiling do something. So what I'm saying is simple, and what Jaron is doing is very hypocritical, because in his mirror test video, he said this is a very easy and simple and cheap experiment that anybody can do to prove that the earth is flat. So he went from doing a cheap, easy experiment that everybody can do, to doing an expensive, difficult experiment that only a few people can do who can afford to go on a trip. That is a big 180, man. From simple, easy, cheap experiments that we all can do to expensive, funded projects that only a few people can do, and they're very complex. That sounds like the space program. So it should be clear to you by now that Jaron is not one of us, because he's too inconsistent. In my opinion, he's a paid actor who says whatever the highest bidder want him to say, and that would explain his constant wishy-washiness. For example, Jaron is always proving that the earth is flat with his ground measurements, his mirror tests and laser tests. But when he's in the mainstream media, like with Behind the Curve, he proved this a globe. Jaron said he has always measured the earth flat. He even said that because he measured it flat, if it's a globe, it must be a huge globe, because you can't measure the curve. It's something that he says all the time. Yet, in the hit piece Behind the Curve, they measured the curve. And everybody should find it fishy that when D. Marble did his laser test to prove that the earth is flat, it was around the same time Behind the Curve came out doing a similar test to prove that it's a globe. And around that same time, Stephen Hawking did a test over water to so-called prove a globe. But when D. Marble did his test to prove it's flat, they said it was just refraction. But when they do the same test and prove it's a globe, no refraction issues. And Jaron always prove it's flat when he's not in front of the mainstream.
Look at this mirror flash. How are you seeing a mirror flash? They're supposed to be 100-foot. No, they're doing 18 miles, I think. So it's like a 60-foot hump, but 60 foot is a 6-story building. How would we be seeing a mirror flash from the other side of the water when there's supposed to be a 60-foot hump in between you? The answer is there is no curvature on Earth. The answer is there is no curvature on Earth. The answer is there is no curvature on Earth.
But whenever he's in front of the mainstream, he always find the curve.
The globe, the sphere Earth, perfectly describes the observations that I made.
I just don't know how the globe would perfectly describe the observation that you made when in this same live stream that I'm playing, Jaron also admitted he's not all of a sudden just going to become a glober, but yet he says that Earth is just a big ball, so he's a glober. But what I find hypocritical, he says that the globe perfectly explains his observation, but in this same live stream, he also said he don't believe that the Earth is spinning. That's one belief he haven't subscribed to yet. So he do maintains that the Earth ain't spinning. But if he gonna maintain that the Earth ain't spinning, he can't say his observation perfectly matches the globe model, because the globe model requires the Earth to spin. You big dummy. He don't agree that the Earth is spinning. But the observation he saw in Antarctica is based upon the Earth spinning. And he still says that the globe model perfectly matches the observation that he saw. I don't understand how it can be both. But see, when you're getting paid, you don't really spend a lot of time trying to get everything right. And you don't mind if people think you lying or can catch you in lies because your pockets is laced. You knew it was going to be a price to pay for the bag. And all you got to do is just give lame excuses and everything that we seeing right now. Double talking and all that.
The globe, the sphere Earth, perfectly describes the observations that I made.
That ought to be a red flag to y'all that this guy is a paid shield. If we got the truth, your conclusions shouldn't be so inconsistent all the time. You know, the only people who are inconsistent are people that gotta keep lying and explaining themselves.
The answer is there is no curvature on Earth. The answer is there is no curvature on Earth. The answer is there is no curvature on Earth.
He's really not a flat earther or a globalist. In my opinion, and I can't prove it, I think he's a Jesuit. I think he's plugged into the brotherhood, and that money is his main motive, not proving the shape of the earth and all of that stuff. We have here Bob Nodell, IMDb. Won't you guys connect the dots? Won't we connect the dots and see that every time flat earth is on a mainstream level, they proving that it's a globe. It's a hit piece. And then when they leave the mainstream media, they come back to the flat earth community as if nothing happened, and they're playing both sides. I'm still investigating everybody in flat earth. I don't want to call names, but I know the people that I just called now are definitely shields and agents. It's not a question at this point, and I'm still investigating other people to see where they stand. But all of the people with IMDb's seem to be working against us while they're among us. And it just so happened that they have the big mainstream media push behind them, even though we didn't make them the leaders of flat earth. The mainstream media did, just like they doing with Jaron. It's just an act to them. Same thing with Pastor Duffy. He's not a real Christian. He's acting for the money. Same thing with Jaron. He's not a real flat earther. He's acting for the money. Jesuits have infiltrated many movements, and they not really there for the movement. They're there to extract the money out the movement. And it's not one particular group. The reason I keep saying Jesuits is because there was a rumor that Jaron was a Jesuit, But I also know that the Vatican is merged with NASA and that the Jesuits are integrated within the Vatican. And you can do your own research on that. The Jesuits are like servants and protectors of the papacy. And they're basically going to be the knights and sort of soldiers to intellectually protect the status quo and modern church doctrine as we know it today. So they're like warriors for the priesthood, intellectual warriors that are sent out to undermine any truth movements. So it's not a coincidence that Jaron and Mark Sargent and Patricia Steer all were part of Behind the Curve. And that was a big hit piece. They are always infiltrated if they are real grassroots movements that poses a threat. And one thing we got to remember is that most of the people in the top of these movements are put there. Most of our leaders are appointed to us and given to us. A huge percentage of grassroots movements have always been compromised by money. The next question, why would you think that the flat earth community would be any different? Question. Think about that. Why would you think that the flat earth community would be any different? I would say if you think that the flat earth community would be any different when it is indeed a grassroots movement that poses a huge threat, then I would say you need to grow up and quit being so naive. It's not a coincidence that Jaron's Kanye West MK Ultra dummy switch came on when Pastor Moneybags showed up. Some more important things that Duffy and Jaron have in common that we need to definitely point out is that they both are implants that have leadership roles. Both of them are being financially backed, and they also are being backed by the big bad mainstream media. Jaron and Globebusters have always seemed to come up with the funds to fund these big so-called experiments that end up being hit pieces. And if these were experiments that were funded grassroots by flat earthers, I definitely don't think that they would make it to the big bad mainstream media. You got to consider the fact that Jaron has an IMDb. He's an actor, just like Patricia Steer, Mark Sargent, who both did Behind the Curve, which was a hit piece. See, there's a theme between the IMDb people and the hit pieces that we see in the mainstream media. And these are the flat earthers that on a grassroots level on YouTube, they really don't get a lot of traction, but they end up being in the mainstream media all the time. And just like with Jaron right now, they even saying he's the world's most popular flat earther, when if you're in the grassroots community, you know that ain't true. Jaron is all over the mainstream media, and his latest video still isn't doing nowhere near the numbers that Eric Dubé's latest videos are doing. Because when it comes to the real grassroots flat earth community, we support the real, and that's why they're mad. They cannot dismantle this community. But I will say that this so-called experiment have divided us up a lot, but I think it's for the good. It's separating the real from the fake. Pastor Duffy is a pastor whose ministry can barely get 1,000 views on a YouTube video. So he's nowhere near popular in his own community. But yet, right now, he's the man of the hour all over the mainstream media, and the same thing with Jaron. So I'm thinking Jaron got the media connection, him, Patricia Steele, Mark Sargent, the IMDb people, and the pastor got the money. You bring it together, you get the final experiment, TFE, which in my opinion stands for the futile exercise. So we see the fishiness surrounding this little bit right here. Both of them are implants that have leadership roles, and a lot of times our leaders are given to us, and a lot of these grassroots movements that's a real threat, they are infiltrated by guys who are financially backed and have the mainstream media behind them, which is why they end up being the voice of that group that they infiltrated. And when they finally rise to power, they eventually start teaching the opposite of what their assigned groups stand for and begin to misrepresent the group on purpose. Politicians do this all the time, and it's because they were planted there all along to serve the enemy's agenda. And that agenda is always the opposite of the people they claim to represent. It almost start to feel as if they're working against their own, and it's because they are. So why do they eventually end up having ideologies that are opposite of their assigned group? It's more proof that they are implants and that was the plan all along. And they end up trying to explain in these ridiculous ways on why they are now turning against the group who trusted them. Politicians do it all the time. And this leads to the next point, which is basically piggybacking from the previous point. An important thing that Duffy and Jerry have in common, they both have mirrored missions, meaning that Pastor Duffy is supposed to be a Christian, a man of God, a man of truth and honesty. But what is he teaching? That it's okay to lie and deceive. He's teaching something that's contrary to the group that he's supposed to be representing. And what he's teaching is a new and false doctrine that is misrepresenting that group and misrepresenting the Bible. And on the other hand, you got Jaronism, who's supposed to be a flat earther, who is now saying it's a big ball and Earth is a Home Depot. And he seemed to can't make up his mind. He seemed to be in this fence straddling position where he's torn in between the two. And this is on purpose. He have the same mirrored mission of Pastor Duffy to infiltrate these groups and then to eventually start preaching the agenda of the world elite and the evil agenda of those in power, which is lying, deception, capitalism, and etc. Pastor Duffy supposed to be a man of truth, teaching that it's okay to lie and deceive, and Jaron is supposed to be a flat earther who is saying maybe it's a big ball, which is the globe earth argument. So he's trying to play both sides. And that's what these implants do. And as long as we allow them to do that, they stay among us like a cancer that's slowly killing us from the inside out. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to stop. Jaron is going to get bigger and bigger. He's going to go on more bigger platforms, get more bigger interviews. It's going to be more documentaries, news interviews, and just more propaganda coming behind this experiment. And you guys seem to think that it's all over now when it's just began. He is not going to stop until they use Jaron to drive this whole thing into the ground.
If it turns out the earth is not flat, then that means it's Christians who are keeping this false idea alive and perpetuating an idea that simply isn't true.
So Pastor Duffy has created this little video with the sad music behind it and all that. The Bible says, prove all things, and the earth have been proven to be flat, whether the world want to accept it or not. And he's acting like he's so concerned with Christians putting out an idea that's not true, when he the one that taught them it's okay to lie and deceive.
Stupid.
Now he want them to be truthful. He's acting like he's so concerned that these Christians may be putting out something that's not the truth. But I'm like, bro, you teach that it's okay to lie and deceive, and that ain't true. Who are you to judge? Because the Bible don't say it's okay to lie and deceive. In that sermon that the pastor gave, he said, I've come to the conclusion. That's his teaching. The Bible said, thou shalt not lie. And all of this, well, will you lie to save your life? Christ didn't. And y'all got to think about that. These people are trying to create a life or death situation, a wartime scenario, a third world post-apocalyptic scenario and all that just to make it okay to lie. Boy, they really want to lie bad, don't it? Every example they give on when it's okay to lie is some life-threatening moment, like everybody getting their life threatened every day. Like everybody in a POW war situation every day. They just trying to open up the door to make lying okay, and that's a trick of the devil. So he can't be worried about Christians putting the truth out there if he's teaching that it's okay to lie, and he putting the lies out there by teaching that.
And they're also claiming that it's taught in the Bible.
When flat earthers are teaching that flat earth is taught in the Bible, they are correct. And a pastor should know that if he reads the Bible. When the Bible speak about a circle of the earth that the throne of God sit above, that's Hebrew cosmology. That's not a globe earth cosmology. Flat earthers are spot on. The Bible have several references to let us know the earth is flat and immovable. It even have a scripture that says God placed the stars inside of the firmament dome, which means that the idea that NASA is giving you with stars out of space and all that is anti-biblical. And they even tell you in science that they can't see stars from outer space. So think about this. How is it that when you on the earth, you can see a twinkling star in the sky, but when you get off of the earth, you can't see it? How can you travel to something that you can't see? So globalists have an explanation for why we can't see stars in space. The Bible says that the stars are inside the expanse of the sky. And in my opinion, to me, the Bible is giving us a scientific answer, is letting us know that the stars are holographic projections that are coming from the ground, and that these stars are being projected onto the sky like a plasma screen, like you projecting a picture on your wall with a movie projector or something like that. Same sort of simple idea. And the sky would be the wall or the thing that the stars are being projected upon. So when you get above a certain layer of the atmosphere, above the layer that the stars are projected upon, they're no longer visible to you, because it's the same sort of mirage effect that we get with rainbows, that you can only see a rainbow from a certain angle. Or a road mirage that looks like water, you can only see it from a certain angle. And to me, that makes more sense. Science tries so hard to explain everything and exclude the creator and intelligent design. And that's going to be a future video that I make about Pastor Duffy to show you his satanic agenda with the world elite, which is to get rid of the idea of intelligent design and a creator, which is anti-biblical. This is the agenda of the papacy. So when we get up so high up in the sky, the stars ain't visible to us no more because they on a certain level within the firmament dome and projected within the sky. The atmosphere is being used like a plasma screen. So people who not proving all things, they gonna go to hell, and they can't blame the Bible. They can't make an excuse because the Bible told you to prove all things and you didn't prove nothing. You went with the world because they was ridiculing the flat earthers. You Christians ain't proving nothing. You going with what the pastors say, and that's why I say you're a church member. You're not trying to be Christ-like. You need to ignore what these pastors is saying and just look at the way Christ was living and mimic that. Because him telling you that it's okay to lie, well, we know that ain't Christ-like. And we know that ain't in the Bible. But flat earth is in the Bible. A circle is not a sphere. The Bible speak about the earth being on foundations, like a house. And if you look at the globe, that's blasphemous. When it come to what the Bible teaching about the earth being on foundations, that thing ain't foundated. They said when God come back, every eye shall see God. How would that be possible on a globe? Unless God gonna project copies of himself all around the globe. Everything about the Bible is based upon flat earth cosmology. And a lot of mysteries that people don't understand about the Bible is because they're not associating the Hebrews cosmology with the Bible. This pastor is a millionaire charlatan. He's part of the world elite and he's leading many astray. Y'all need to get away from this man quick.
So there are serious ramifications here. There are potentially significant consequences associated with this idea. Just consider what's actually potentially at stake here.
There's nothing at stake other than a big cash cow that the world elite have at their disposal based upon our ignorance and stupidity. See, big millionaire pastors like Duffy, again, their churches are in bed with the state. They can't have all of these churches around the world that got their church members voting and going to the ballot box when they power come from God. And that show you that the church power come from the state, from the world power system. And the Bible told them to be in the world and not of it. All of these pastors that's rich as hell and they're in the bed with the state, they can't have their people going against the state. The government, the corporations, them getting their money being in bed with the devil is only allowing them to be in these high places of society because they're leading their sheeple to the slaughterhouse. And all of the communities that got the most churches, they got the most violence, crime, and evil. And that's something you need to think about. These pastors ain't teaching the true word of Christ. These pastors ain't teaching a congregation to live Christ-like. All of these churches are following the ways of the world. You can't distinguish Christians nowadays from regular people who don't go to church, and they supposed to be standing out. They supposed to be the shining light. He cannot risk his congregation turning on the state, turning on the government. These pastors that are misleading all of these people around the world in these huge churches and congregations, they have unified their congregations and church doctrines with the papacy and the Vatican and the big corporations and big pharma. They've worked hard to unify their congregation with the state and to have their people build up trust with the world powers and the corporations. And flat earth is a threat to all of that. Because the moment everybody in the church start realizing how much the powers that be have been lying to us, then they will see the devil for who he really is. Not some dragon with red horns, but a system that is waging war against the masses. A system of men and brotherhoods and secret societies. So these people can't risk everything they work for to be in the bed with the state, just to have all of their congregations lose trust in the state and go to questioning the whole system and basically proving all things like the Bible told them to do versus just believing the experts. No Christian gonna be able to make no excuse and say, well, he told me to do it or he told me to do it, because the Bible told you to prove all things. And the Bible told you greater is the one that is in me than the one that is in the world. If the Spirit of God is in you and God is all knowing and there's something that a Christian don't know, guess what? The Spirit in you says you can find out if you do the scientific method and do research and experimentation. You can go out there and find out anything you want. You know why? Because God is so good. God gave us some call a mind. And can't nobody stop you from thinking, buddy. See, ain't gonna be no excuses. And you ain't gonna be able to make no excuse in the day of judgment if you fall astray to what somebody's saying, because the Bible already put in there a disclaimer to say, hey, if you go astray, that's on you, because God told you what to do to prevent that. How you got the Spirit of truth in you, but you falling for lies all the time? How is a Christian going to convince everybody in the world that the Spirit that dwells in me is the Spirit of truth when y'all being led to the slaughterhouse by the same liars that's leading the gangbangers and killers to the slaughterhouse? How you any different than anybody in the world if the corporations and world powers got you led astray too? But you the Christian and you supposed to have the shining light in you, and you supposed to be turning everybody else around, saying, watch out for the enemy. If you look at this video, you will see that the flat earthers are going out there with laser beams, doing all kind of experiments and stuff, proving that it's flat. In the field, undeniable stuff. They just nitpicking at the experiments. I've heard so many nitpicking excuses about every experiment we do that proves that it's flat. Prove all things. When some globe earther come out and downplay our experiments, instead of you believing the globe earther, guess what the Bible told you to do? Go out there and prove it for yourself. Verify what the flat earther did and see who telling the truth. Y'all ain't doing that. It's a lot of rich people using their money to create propaganda and hit pieces on the TV to sway y'all to the globe earth side, but you ain't gonna be able to make no excuses on why you didn't know the truth. Because the Bible said, prove all things, and I don't care about being mocked, long as I know I got the truth.
There are potentially significant consequences associated with this idea. Just consider what's actually potentially at stake here, including Christianity, including what the world thinks of Christianity, the Bible, and how the Bible will be regarded by everyone.
You see, Pastor Duffbag here cares a lot about how he looks to the world and how Christians look versus if they're doing what's right by God. You see, even Jesus wasn't liked by the world because the world is evil and Jesus was good.
Including what the world thinks of Christianity.
Why is this pastor so bent on not looking like an embarrassment to the world, so much that he's willing to lie and deceive to fit in with the world?
Neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral, including what the world thinks of Christianity.
Even though his Bible say, be in the world and not of the world. See, Jesus faced ridicule daily for being the light in a dark world. But this pastor seemed to want the easy way out. And the easy way, unfortunately, it's the broad path that leads directly to hell. which is why I say he's one of the pastors of the great apostasy. How can he not be when he's teaching the doctrine of the serpent and of Satan the deceiver? You got to keep in mind why I keep referencing the NASA logo, the serpent tongue, because you also got to factor in the fact that NASA in Hebrew means to deceive.
Neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
Now, do you guys think all of these connections are just a coincidence? If you do, please get in the comment section. You can't trust nothing that a person does or says that tries to justify lying and deception with the Bible. I'm going to get on my phone right now and show you why. We're going to read a couple of scriptures. Proverbs 12:17-27. When you tell the truth, justice is done, but lies lead to injustice. That's right. Come on, man. Do you hear that? You can't trust nothing a person does or says who tries to justify lying and deception with the Bible, because when they try to do that, that in itself is proof that there's never a good time to lie and deceive, because trying to justify lying and deception with the Bible is an act of lying and deception itself. That's right. That's right. That's producing a bad result. And to teach that and to do that is to compromise the Bible. And now the Bible start losing integrity and the standards get lowered throughout the church, which is part of the New World Order agenda that these rich pastors got anyway. So to say that it's a good time to lie or there's an appropriate time to deceive and to try to teach that with the Bible is you're your own proof that it's never a good time to lie and deceive, because when you try to do that with the Bible, that's actually a cringe thing to do and actually a very bad thing to do altogether, and just goes against the Bible, no matter how this pastor try to twist it. And I'm going to show you why. Let's read some more. John 17:17. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Right. What? This is in the Bible. Jesus didn't have to lie and deceive to anybody to make them a better person or to do good things. And Jesus was one of the best examples of good morality that we ever known. That's right. And he never had to lie or deceive. He just let the righteousness, the honesty within him shine and influence others. And look how many people around the world is inspired to try to be like this figure that we call Jesus. And it's crazy that I got to teach this to a pastor, which is why I said earlier, either money make you dumb or some people are just paid to play stupid. And it's crazy because wherever we see a lot of money, it seems to be a lot of ignorance.
You mentioned that the ground always being flat, and I agree. I've measured it flat. I've done laser tests. I've done mirror flash observations. No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the earth be flat.
Wherever we see a lot of money, it seems to be a lot of ignorance to simple things that the Bible laid down. It says here in Proverbs that a lie has a short life, but the truth lives on forever. What? It say the Lord hates liars, but is pleased with those who keep their word. Come on, man. It's going to be hard to debate this one, Pastor. That's right. After we done with the morality of it, the spiritual side of it, I'm going to take my time and be very thorough. The first layer is just the moral character. And that's the viral clip that you see going around that shows a lot about who we dealing with here. That's very important. So, of course, you know I can read scriptures till I'm blue in the face, but I think you guys get the point, you know. Thou shalt not lie. You know, that's one of the 10 commandments. It says in Leviticus 19:11, you shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another.
This is Jaronism reminding you again, don't lie to each other.
Tell the truth.
And Jaron knows that. He quotes that a lot. I can do this all day. Ephesians 4:25. God desires his followers to be people of the truth. Ooh, this one gonna burn him bad right here, y'all. This one gonna burn him bad like alcohol in a cut. Watch this, y'all. It say in Ephesians chapter 6, 10 through 17, the belt of truth is the first piece of spiritual armor. Oh my God. No. Psalms 145:18. The Lord is close to all who call on him. Yes, to all who call on him in truth. That's right. Not in the spirit of deception and lying and you really ain't truthful in your heart. Right. You know you ain't really sorry and all that. So we get the point here. Pastor Duffy is clearly a false prophet of the great apostasy. That's right. And you don't even have to agree with me that the earth is flat to agree with me on that. Right. What? Don't look just as deceptive as him trying to defend him. Be a man and be honest, something apparently he can't do. And be honest and at least say, Sanchez, I don't agree with what Pastor talking about with all that deception stuff, but that don't make the earth flat. And I will agree with you. I would agree with you. My initial argument that I'm making right now is not an argument really based upon the earth is flat. It's saying that the person who's spearheading the final experiment is a Decepticon. So that should make you question this experiment with gloves on and a magnifying glass. That's all I'm saying. And you should look at everything with the footage and point out all the flaws, just like we do with NASA video footage. And guess what the excuse that y'all flat earthers make? Well, we can't go to space, so all we got is the footage, and we got to investigate the footage. And most of the time, you can find clear evidence that it's some fishy about this footage.
After exhaling his vape hit into the camera, rather than picking up some of the snow that was all around him, for some reason, Austin walks several feet away and picks up a bit of snow from over there, then walks it back to the camera and lets it fall to the ground. If snow is everywhere all around him, why did he have to walk way over there to get some? Anytime close-up footage of their feet was shown, their footprints always failed to make any impression in the snow. Here, he moves his left foot, and there is no impression, footprint, or displaced snow.
So use that same energy with the final experiment. Most of us can't go to Antarctica unless your pockets is laced up. So let's be very critical of the footage. And there's nothing wrong with that. And when you do that, you will find certain flaws that just shouldn't be, that just shouldn't exist. It's just a lot of fishy stuff about it. And I'm going to deal more about the fakery of this stuff in the future. But right now, I want to deal with the man behind it all and his moral character.
Neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
We live in a Christian country. Our government, military, and legal officials swear in on the Bible. Lying in our courtrooms is an act of perjury, and yet this pastor is going to make it okay now. And you already know it's going to be people trying to back this evil pastor and make his stance on lying and deception make sense. And when they try to do it, they just going to look silly like this guy.
And I would agree with Pastor Will Duffy. Sometimes, in fact, it's nice to be deceptive or to lie. For example, what I'm going to say about your video now is a lie. I'm going to say that your video highlights your best qualities, which is your ability to think outside the box and challenge scientific norms.
In your attempt to try to defend Pastor Duffy, if everybody did what you guys did, you wouldn't have teachers in classrooms. Because if the teachers was trying to be nice, according to your definition, they wouldn't let the student know that you lacking and that you need help on a particular thing. They would lie to them. And again, why am I pointing all this out? You can't give a good example of why lying is okay. And somebody can say, but what if it's to save my life? What if somebody boom, 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 boom? Remember now, I'm going to just tell y'all something that you may not want to hear. Before Christ lied, he died. They call us the liars when they're the ones going out of their way to justify lying and deception, and we the ones pushing against lying and deception. Make that make sense. All we want is the truth and honesty. Truth is that which can be measured, that which can be verified. This is why, unlike the final experiment, our experiments are based upon measurable, provable facts that anyone can do for themselves to verify that it's true. People who try to justify an immoral act 9 times out of 10 are the main ones guilty of that act. And just pay attention to which side is trying to justify lying and deception. Pay attention to which side got more to lose, and you'll come to the conclusion that when it comes to the flat earth side, we just honestly want the truth. And the truth is that which can be measured, that which is provable. Everybody can do it. This is why, again, our experiments are based upon truth, fact, measurable facts that all of us can go and do. And it ain't just up for a few people making hit pieces and you gotta just believe in them. That's no different than NASA and the space program, flat earthers. Don't fall for it. It's the exact same tactics we see in space programming. Fishy footage, questionable videos, and you just stuck having to believe in just a few men, a handful of men. That's a Freemasonic tactic. And everybody that don't believe in them few men gets ridiculed, outcasted, and etc. And it's driven into the masses via the mainstream machine, like what we see with this so-called final experiment. So the final experiment ain't really based upon doing ground experimentation that's based upon measurements, concrete facts, numbers that don't lie, provable truth that all of us can do for ourselves and verify. It's not based on that. It's based upon really a false dichotomy.
No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the earth be flat.
How would we be seeing a mirror flash from the other side of the water when there's supposed to be a 60-foot hump in between you? The answer is there is no curvature on Earth. The answer is there is no curvature on Earth. The answer is there is no curvature on Earth.
You mentioned that the ground always being flat, and I agree. I've measured it flat. No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the earth be flat.
False dichotomy and an observation with an explanation. And people, it's just not wise to trade in measurable facts for explanations. Anybody can have an explanation for a phenomena that we all observe. If 100 people observe something, they each can have a explanation that makes sense. But if one person got provable, measurable facts, all of the explanations may sound good, but we got to go with science and truth, which is what? That which can be measured, that which can be proven, not an observation and a good explanation or a bad explanation or explanation at all. Explanations aren't facts. They can be or can't be. In this case, this explanation doesn't take away the measurable fact, which is why I said earlier, sky observations don't change ground measurements. People who are debating about the shape of the ground, if they want the truth, they would stick to what's measurable.
And I agree. I've measured it flat. And I agree. I've measured it flat. And I agree. I've measured it flat.
What's provable. Because when it comes to the question, is the earth a globe? Then an example of a legitimate experiment would be something like,
back to the right. All right, yeah. Right there. Yep.
Right there.
Yep. Right there. That's perfect. That is it.
You can see that beam well.
Yep. You're shining it right at me. Everybody can see it. perfect.
Yeah, because I can see it hit the water. I can't see the beach, but I can definitely see the train line it's hitting.
Yep. 10 miles away, right?
Yep, 142, I think it is.
Yep. That's 10 miles away, folks. Boom. There it is.
So if you're looking for the truth, you'll be looking for the curvature. Because again, sky observations don't change ground measurements. Lasers don't bend. And even Jaron said out of his own mouth,
I've measured it flat. I've measured it flat. I've measured it flat.
You can't nitpick at D. Marble's experiment. And later on in this series, when I talk about refraction, and when I deal with the laser experiment and the arguments that globalists try to make, I'm going to show you why you just can't nitpick at this experiment. It's a foolproof, simple experiment that is excellent to do. And you can't just shoot it down by saying one word answers like refraction that you are regurgitating from news media outlets. Y'all are so programmed, man. So ignoring measurable and provable facts that we all can verify to go along with this questionable experiment with all of this fishy footage, when what D. Marble did is something we all can verify, even what Jaron did with the mirror test. Why ignore what's provable, what's verifiable, what's truthful to go along with this fool's expedition that's funded by this lying rich pastor who've always hated flat earth? So what Jaron is doing, he's choosing an observation and an explanation for the observation over measurable and provable facts that we all can validate and verify, which is the direct definition of what truth is. That which can be validated, verified by everybody. He's throwing that out the door. It goes back to what I said. You can't be consistent when your conclusion is motivated by money versus what's provable and verifiable and factual and truthful. In a court of law, let's say there's an incident and everyone that observed the said incident, right? It can be whatever, right? A legal issue or whatever. And everyone that observed it have their own explanation. Now, the judge may consider all of the explanations and let the jury decide which explanation sounds more feasible. A judge will never place the observation of a witness and the witness's explanation of the observation over the other person's argument that they're supporting with provable, measurable, verifiable facts and truth. That just won't fly. Now you should see why they go out of their way to make lying and deceiving okay. Because in order to lie and deceive, you have to ignore the facts. You have to ignore the facts and play dumb. And that's exactly what Jaron is doing.
No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the earth be flat.
How would we be seeing a mirror flash from the other side of the water when there's supposed to be a 60-foot hump in between you? The answer is there is no curvature on earth.
So in order to be a practitioner of the art of lying and deceit, you have to also have the conniving ability to dodge the truth. So you have to be able to ignore the facts and replace those facts with the lies and deception via a false dichotomy, which will also serve as a distraction mechanism, which will distract people away from the original truth and provable facts that we all can measure and verify and validate ourselves. So you got to ignore the facts. And what are the facts? Jaron will tell you, listen,
There is no curvature on Earth.
I've measured it flat. I've measured it flat.
There is no curvature on Earth.
you never want to swap a provable, measurable fact with an observation backed by an explanation. We all can observe something, and everyone that observed it can have a different explanation for what we observe. Everybody can be wrong. A few people can be wrong. More than one person can be right. But at the end of the day, we really don't know, because they just a bunch of explanations, whether good or bad. They just a bunch of explanations for an observation. And anybody of the group can say, well, my explanation explain it better than yours, but can't nobody honestly say my explanation is the truth and the 100% fact, and it can't happen no other way. It can only happen the way I explained it. That's a false dichotomy. And who do you think you are? That is very egotistical and narcissistic. So these explanations aren't necessarily the truth, just because one may or may not explain the observation better or worse than the next one. Because truth, again, is that which can be measured, that which is verifiable, provable, not just that which is explained very good. That ain't how this works. And one thing is for sure, numbers don't lie. But rich pastors like Will Duffy, well, hey, you already know where he stands.
Neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
So numbers don't lie, but observations can lie. Explanations can explain observations very well, and we still get the facts and find out that even though it was a good explanation, it still wasn't the truth once we get the evidence. That happens all the time too. So an observation may propose several explanations, good or bad, but once you know concrete, measurable facts, you should never get rid of that for any of the explanations, no matter how good they are. And the explanations will always change. And the people who play these kind of games, these kind of dishonest people like Jaron, their conclusion will always change.
How would we be seeing a mirror flash from the other side of the water when there's supposed to be a 60-foot hump in between you? The answer is there is no curvature on Earth.
No, it's anybody with any intelligence realizes that the sun cannot be going around somebody in Antarctica and the Earth be flat.
Will always change, because it's not motivated by truth and what's measurable. It's motivated by money, because it didn't change till he met a rich pastor. So explanations are inconsistent. No matter how good or bad, they are inconsistent. But the truth is not. It's very consistent. And people who lie a lot, they lean to explanations a lot. They like to explain themselves and do a lot of splaining when you're lying a lot. Liars tend to lead toward the explanatory approach versus what's factual and provable. We got to remember, in order to lie and deceive, you got to ignore the provable facts, which is what Jaron is doing. And what is he doing? Leaning toward the explanatory approach. And people who behave like this, they're never consistent. They always going back and forth on their stances. 1 minute they proving that the earth flat, the next minute they doing a hit piece proving it's a globe, and they just back and forth. And that's because it's all about money with them. They will prove it's flat to flat earthers who are donating to them and supporting them with money so that they can prove that it's flat. And they will also prove it's a globe to the globalists that's donating and got money. And people who motivated by money will just go back and forth and then explain themselves later after they take the check. And they never consistent. And the truth is that Jaron is behaving like a paid shield. And we already know he's an actor who's a member of the IMDb. And most actors are paid shills. They're for sale. They're literally like whores to the highest bidder. So now that he got the check from Duffy, he's in this position where he can play both sides and still get money from flat earthers by saying, yes, we measured it flat and all that stuff. But then later on, he says, but it's possible it's still a big ball. So he can play both sides and double dip. And this is what dishonest people do. They're not consistent. They're fence straddlers. So when it comes to Jaron, Pastor Duffy, and this agenda that they're pushing, this false dichotomy that they're pushing, not only do everyone involved got to play dumb and ignore the facts, when they create their false dichotomy / distraction, it has to take everyone's attention off of those provable facts, those facts that everyone can prove. Because everyone can do these experiments that Jaron did with the mirror, that D. Marble did with the laser. But everyone ain't rich. Everyone can't go to space, and everyone can't go to Antarctica. You see the trend here? Y'all starting to see the trend here? These agents and implants, they like to create a situation where we all got to just rely and trust a few men. We all got to depend on a handful of men and take their words for it and their fishy footage for it. And it takes the power out of all of our hand. And it turns into now just like a belief system where you got to believe them or get ridiculed and called names. And when you mix that with the fact that you're forced to only believe these few men, and that the whole thing was led by a pastor who literally says that lying and deception is okay, those aren't no good odds right there. I'm sorry. That ain't what science is about. To ignore provable, measurable facts, to take the words of just a few men and the dude that's over this so-called experiment have always hated flat earth and wanted to destroy it. And he's a millionaire pastor who teaches that lying and deceiving is okay. The ones who go out of their way to make lying and deception okay are liars and deceivers. It's that simple. It's no different than pastors who are attracted to the same sex going out of their way to make same intimacy okay with God, and they use the Bible to justify it. Hey, do what you do, but hey, don't try to justify it with the Bible, right? It's no different than greedy prosperity gospel preachers going out of their way to make it like God is okay with their greedy capitalistic lifestyles. They'll misinterpret what the Bible means by abundance to promote the lifestyles of the world and of the rich and famous. But at the core of all of this is a foundation of lies and deception, which ultimately leads many innocent souls astray. And you got to keep in mind that Pastor Duffy is just another rich pastor who has even written a book on wealth and capitalism. He's very secular and worldly. We know in this world, there's a saying that in order to make it to millionaire status, it takes a bit of, let's just say, the spirit of capitalism. You got to be a little cutthroat. The corporate attitude isn't friendly. It's a, I'm going to silence and knock off my competitor attitude. And that's what we see with Pastor Duffy with his so-called final experiment, which in my opinion, again, TFE should just stand for the Fool's Expedition. But you know, just like the prosperity gospel preachers, they all would try to use the Bible to justify their immoral lifestyle and ways in their capitalistic nature, their cutthroat nature, their snake-like ways. They all are the same, and they all try to justify these things with the Bible. And not only that, they teach this to their congregation and lead other pure, innocent souls astray who are just trying to be better people. So people, to give y'all an example of what I'm talking about, all you got to do is just go to Google, search around the internet for pastors that use the Bible to justify immoral acts, or pastors that are in leadership positions like Will Duffy that use their leadership position to downplay these immoral acts because they know that they practice these immoral acts regularly and they have no intentions of trying to better themselves and be a better person, just like Will Duffy ain't got no intentions on trying to stop lying to people and deceiving people. So because they're so set in their ways and stubborn, and they don't want to step up to the challenge to be more Christ-like, even though it's hard, but we all do it, right? They are the men of God who in high positions, so they should definitely be trying to practice more self-control and discipline instead of trying to use their position, their theological degrees, and even the Bible to normalize and justify these immoral ways. But what I got here is just an article to give an example of what I'm talking about. Like, you can do this all day. You can go around the internet and find bishops, priests, and rich pastors like Duffy that are using their position, power, the Bible, and all that to teach things that are contrary to Christ-like behavior. And here's an article of a priest that actually said PDF file Ilya doesn't kill anyone. Oh my God! So the priest that made this terrible statement that PDF Ilya doesn't kill anyone, just think of how sick that is. Now, the priest that made this statement, he is from a church in Rhode Island, and the name of the head bishop of that church is Bishop Thomas J. Tobin. And he came out and had to respond to the controversy. As we can see here, he responded to the controversy over a series of remarks from a priest in his diocese, which began with the Eucharist and pro-choice politicians. Come on, man. Ain't that something? It goes on to say, and seemed eventually to diminish the gravity of how you know what use. So let that sink in. As he was responding to this sick remark, when he did the response, the meeting just so happened to begin with the Eucharist and pro-choice politicians. You have pro-choice politicians, which are people that are basically advocating for abortion, which is the unaliving of, when we know that the Bible say be fruitful. In the midst of this congregation of PDF bishops, you also got pro-choice politicians. And one thing both of these groups got in common is that they just don't care about. It goes on to say, and seem eventually to diminish the gravity of you know what abuse. So I'm not going to read this whole article. Y'all get the point. And what is the point? The point is people who are guilty of certain behavior try to diminish the gravity of that behavior. That's a problem when you're in a moral position of leadership.
Neither lying nor deception are inherently immoral.
People who don't want to batter themselves and overcome their immoral ways will try to diminish the gravity of their ways and make it like it's no big deal. Just like Pastor Duffy is doing, he's trying to make it like it's no big deal if you lie, if you deceive, versus becoming an honest person. And it's also because there's a lot of people in high statuses in society, they owe lying and deception to their position. And they have to lie and deceive to maintain their position. It's a part of their lifestyle. It's normalized. So they sort of trapped in this lifestyle and they try to normalize it to others so that they won't stand out and look like the only liar in the room. They try to make it like, it's okay if you lie, man. Hey, it's okay. You can lie. You can lie too. You can lie too. That is the spirit of Satan all day. So like I said in the beginning of this video, there are several layers to uncover. And we can't do it all in one video. So stay tuned, follow me on this journey, stick with me with this series because this is an ongoing series where I'm not gonna leave not one stone unturned. So follow me along the way. And in part 2, we're gonna go even deeper, answering so many more questions and debunking so much globe earth foolishness surrounding this final experiment, aka TFE, the feudal exercise. No. Sky observations don't change ground measurements. And with that being said, I'll see y'all next time. Peace and much love.